Last question here. The Smart Money has a Barrett-Walker matchup in November, though that isn't assured. But let's go there since there's a lot of similarity anyway between the two GOP candidates. In a general election, what is to recommend you over your opponent? And let's say that is Walker. And what of the tactic evidence so far of linking you with an incumbent Doyle, who isn't even running? Is that a pitfall for you?
Well, I think it's interesting, of the three major candidates, I'm the only one who ever ran against Jim Doyle. If Scott Walker thought that Jim Doyle was so bad, he could have run against him 4 years ago. In fact, he did run against him 4 years ago until the party leaders told him to get out of the race. I had the courage of my convictions to stay in a race. I think that speaks volumes about character and whether you believe in what you're talking about. In terms of that matchup, and I'm assuming right now that he's going to win that handily, just given the way that race is going. And it's interesting, again, and I think you've seen, you know us both, the leadership styles, but I do hope that you look at the way that he has run his budget operations. And what I mean by that is I think that it's a well-known practice that he has had of coming in and introducing a budget and not fully funding all of county operations. And then the county board comes in and fills it out. He screams about what spendthrifts they are and vetoes it. And then they override his veto. And he talks about, again, what spendthrifts they are. And lo and behold, 5 months later, he produces the next budget, which has the exact same figure that those spendthrifts had 5 months earlier. But he's washed his hands of it. I call it Pontius Pilate budgeting. Because then you go through the same exercise. And that's happened 7, 8 years in a row. And if you look at the first budget that he introduced, the executive budget that he introduced, compare it to the executive budget, the most recent executive budget that he introduced. And you're going to see a big spending, probably $350 million spending increase, $35 million increase in levy. That wasn't something that the board made him do. That's the executive budget. And if he really believed in what he was saying, he would have introduced that 2002 budget again and fought for it if he had the courage of his convictions. In 2003, fought for it and the courage of his convictions. But if it's just a game, and if it's just a game of gotcha, he's played that very well. Because each year he's been able to say to him, gotcha, I made you do the heavy lifting. And
his argument is that he doesn't raise it over last year's budget.
Well, I know what his argument is. So the other one that I hope you take a look at is the issue of borrowing, because he says he's lowered borrowing 10%, and I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, what are you talking about? And here again, I think is a perfect juxtaposition of our different styles. And we may have talked about this before, but I'll talk about it again here. It was about 1.5 years ago that I had my budget director come into my office and say, we've got a real problem here with the downturn in the stock market. For the first time in approximately 15 years, the city of Milwaukee was required to put an employer contribution into our pension system, $49 million. And to put that into context, the levy for our entire city, the tax levy for the entire city, is $247 million. It's $247 million. This is real time. This is 2010. So imagine you've got a business with a new line item that's over 20% of your major collectibles. That's what I had for this year. I had a number of people say to me, just borrow the money. That's what they do at the federal level. That's what they do at the state level. That's what they do at the county level. Just borrow the money. And I call this my gut check moment, because there were no reporters, there were no TV cameras, and I said, we're not borrowing that money. And primarily through spending cuts, we, over $32 million, I'm very proud to sit here and say that City of Milwaukee's pension is fully funded and has zero debt. Move over to the county. He came in, I'm gonna take care of the pension problem. First couple of years, doesn't put in the required amount, or the amount that his board tells him he should be putting in. It starts building and building and building. He borrows $400 million. He borrows $400 million. So for the next 30 years, the people in this county will be paying for it. I think that's what the period is. You can check what the period is. And people in this country are mad. They're mad because they think that politicians do not make difficult decisions, that they kick the can down the road, and that they pose for holy pictures. And this is a perfect distinction between the two of us. Nobody in this room would have thought twice if I had said, oh yeah, we decided that we were going to borrow that money. And you know what I could have done if I had borrowed that money? I could have a tax levy this year for 2010 that would have been lower than the tax levy in 2004 when I came in. And I could have posed for the holy pictures and said, I am the world's greatest budgeter. But I would have known that I stuck that bill on my kids and your kids and our grandkids. And I thought that was wrong. He had the same choice, and he stuck it to the kids and grandkids. And I'm angry about that.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.